I'm sitting on the street of the Italian market in Philadelphia, PA.
Nice. And you said your schedule changed because your son had to go shoot a movie?
Yeah. Well, he's in the middle. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but my kid's Joshua Bruce, and he owns his own production company. He's 18. He's got a production company called Blood Flood Productions.
Nice.
And he's in the middle of shooting a feature film called Burn in Hell, we've been working on for about the last 14 months. So he's wrapping it up, but he did a whole bunch of scenes here in Philly. So he's got a whole crew of like 7 or 8 teenagers.
Nice.
Who are actually working with him on it.
Man, all I did as a teenager was yell a lot in punk bands, so way more ambitious than me.
Me too. Smoked a lot of herb. He's not allowed to smoke pot until he's 21. So
right on. I live in Colorado, so we gave the age limit of 18 to our kids. So
yeah. Oh, Colorado's a big jump from New Jersey, which is pretty much a police state. If you really want to look at it.
Right on, man. Well, thanks so much for doing this interview with us. Like, we just got a few questions, and
yeah, go for it, man.
Right on. Well, so
I like to talk,
I'm gonna try really hard to not repeat questions that I read on the internet and stuff. So, so I was.
And I'll try to stay focused and not go off on some of my tangents.
Oh no, man, we love tangents. Our show is basically built on going off on tangents, so we're good on that.
Guy, because that's all I do is I kind of roll around and ramble.
Nice.
Hang on this one second. Go wipe your face. You look like you've been eating chocolate. I'm here. I'm sitting here with my 10-year-old.
It's all good, man. I got 4 kids, so I feel you.
Yeah. All right, whenever you're ready.
Cool. So I was reading on the AMC website that you got your start like in auctioneering and antiques and stuff like that. And I was just kind of curious, like, what is that one thing that like really sparked your interest in like working more with pop memorabilia and stuff like that, as opposed to, you know?
It's actually a great question that I can actually answer. I was very fortunate. I went to School of Visual Arts in New York City and worked as a bike messenger. And I started working with Christie's and Sotheby's, the auction houses,
right,
as like, from the ground up. I literally started in the city as low as you can get and worked through production and used to handle a lot of their collateral material and did their catalogs. And through my art history background, I sort of really like developed that love. I already had the taste of going to flea markets and yard sales. My mother was an avid yard sailor. I mean, I don't know how it is in Colorado, but in New Jersey, we've got people living on top of people for 200, 300 years. So there's always stuff in the attic and stuff in the basements. And even today, you can still find things, even though the world's gotten so small. But, with her influence on me as 8, 10 years old, we went to a lot of yard sales. The other thing that she used to do, she's a genealogist, so we went to a lot of graveyards. So I have this distinct memories of, like, walking through graveyards, I'm related to a lot of, or descendant from a lot of famous American people.
Nice.
Most notably, the great grandnephew of Teddy Roosevelt. But, those sort of things. So that background, the historical background, sort of was laid into me at a very young age. But I'm in New York and I'm working, and I was given this toy by my late father, who actually was a major influence of mine getting into the collecting field, and it was made by Nomura, and it was a Troy Ruttman special, and it came out in 1952, and it was about 14, 15 inches long. It's a famous piece because it was never mass produced. It was licensed through Mobile, and they only made a few of them. And when I got it, in 1986, it was worth like $1,200. Today, it's probably worth $10,000.
Right.
And that sort of was the catalyst for me to like get into collecting. And I started collecting originally race car memorabilia, tin toys.
Nice.
And then it sort of just jumped from there. I was living in Hoboken in the early mid-'80s, and the gentrification had not yet occurred, and it started to happen. And I was walking by this luggage store called Fusilis, or Fusils. And I went in, and I'd never been in the store because it was a luggage store. Who's going to go to a luggage store? But I went in the back, and the further I got in the back, thank you very much. The further I got in the back, the more it was toys, toy related, and they had Go Lions, the Voltron die-cast robot, still in the box on the shelves and Godikins and all this stuff. But it's the 80s, so they should have that stuff. But I went all the way in the back, and I looked inside of this back room, and nobody had opened that room by the look of the dust for maybe 10, 20 years, and it was filled with 1950s and 60s toys. So I made a deal with the owner, and I went in and I cleared out the whole store, that storage unit in the back closet. It was probably about 10 by 7 feet full. And I cleared it out at 50 cents a piece, and I took it down to, painted it and fixed it up for him. But I ended up with this, at that point I was driving a Jeep, 4 carloads of toys.
Wow.
And that got me started. And it was an enemy, company was called Emenee, EMENEE, 1964, Monster Maker set, and all this crazy rare stuff. There was a G.I. Joe jet from the 60s, the 12-inch jet.
And was it just it was just his backstock stuff that he just never sold?
Yeah, it was stock that had gotten returned, or had the jet, the wind cockpit was a little warped. Didn't make any difference. Still worth $300-400 in 1986.
Right.
That sort of was the money that got me started on everything else. I did my first show that weekend, toy show. It was probably 85, 86, and it sort of just took off from there. Now, I've never considered myself to be a dealer. I'm more of a professional collector, and I'm really into that whole concept of professionally collecting things.
Right.
It's not that you buy any one specific item because it's valuable, but it has a certain intrinsic presence. Because I like to live with things. I've got a pretty huge collection. Whether it's worth hundreds of thousands or thousands of thousands, doesn't really make any difference. It's never been my end goal is never to be the richest guy in the world with toys.
Right.
I just like to collect stuff.
So that actually segues into another question I had. It sounds different than I would think. I work at a comic book shop, so there's a lot of things that that come into the shop that are cool and whatever, but I don't have any particular attachment to it. It sounds like you actively seek out things that you might be kind of attached to buy and sell. Is there anything that just really gets you going when you see it? What's that thing that makes you giddy when you see them roll into, your shop or whatever?
Certainly Japanese vinyl toys.
Yeah.
I find them so rarely in the field that when I do find them, I kind of can do a cartwheel.
Nice.
I'm very much into the Japanese style of figures. So, they were way beyond the culture itself is so fascinating. And their connection to TV and movie characters like Ultraman and Godzilla and Gamera, the main ones, but certainly Spectre-Man, Mirror Man, and just on and on, the Sentai movement of the late 60s and 70s. So when I go to a place and I actually find something, and I find things all the time, because you got to put yourself in the right place.
Right.
So we're always finding, hold on one second. I'm literally sitting outdoors. It's 36 degrees, and it's a cloudy day in Philly, but it's kind of very picturesque.
Nice.
And everybody's never been to the Italian market. It's pretty fascinating.
It sounds just about as cold as it is here in Colorado too. It's 25, 30 out right now. Oh, anyway, so you were talking about how you like to position yourself so that you're finding the kind of...
Yeah, and yesterday was a perfect example. In New Jersey, we have church sales. I'm sure you have church sales all across the country and all around the world. But, to get there early in the morning is a real key thing. And my wife likes to go with me, and I always leave an hour before the sale opens and stand in line for 45 minutes.
Right.
And it's kind of funny because I've been standing in line for 45 minutes with the same people for 20 years.
Right.
I've been doing this for so long. And yesterday, number 10 through the door, probably the first, I was one of the guy buying toys, but, I have simple rules of thumb. I never dig around. I just buy the whole box, especially at a church sale where it's a quarter an item, and you can just literally buy the whole box. So there's a box of 80s action figures, Lion-O, Thundercats, He-Man, Visionaries. and you don't dicker. You just buy the whole box.
Right.
So, you take it home and you spill it out, and, it's got Battle Beast in it. Now, that, to me, was like, and maybe it's a marginal. It cost me $10 for the box. Maybe it's $200 retail. But just that hunting, gathering, getting up in the morning and actually scoring something and taking out, away from the other people, to me, is always like a really big thing.
Right. It's almost like I mean, like you said, you're a professional collector. You basically do your hobby for a living. That's pretty awesome. Since you do your hobby for a living, do you have like a weird hobby, like working part-time at Starbucks or something, or?
No, I actually, I started a consulting business, so I actually do what I do for other people.
Nice.
So I work for a cartel out of North Jersey, and I work with Anthony Schneider, who is probably the second largest comic art dealer in the world. He's also the son of Jimmy the Greek Snyder, and he and I have sort of formed this, I don't know what company. We made this company with 12 people, and we go around like just massively buying things, and it's great for me because I get to spend his money,
right?
And I don't have to take anything home because I already have like 10,000 items in my own collection. And I've got two offices, one in Red Bank right around the corner from the stash, and another in my house, which I've had for years, 1,500 square feet, filled with stuff. So it gets to the point, as a collector, certainly a professional collector, you run out of room and you need to think about the next step, the next step, the next step.
Right.
But as a part-time job, no, I'm pretty much, we're doing that. And we're doing the production work for my kid. I'm sort of like the executive producer of that. And obviously, I work producing Comic-Cons and whatnot. So we've been doing that for the last couple of years. But, I don't believe that work is like a 9 to 5. Certainly in this business, it's a wake up at dawn and go to sleep at 11 sort of existence. And being in New Jersey, it's just so, it's the heartland. I mean, New Jersey, Pennsylvania is where everything is.
Right.
I mean, I send stuff, when I do sell stuff, I send it all over the planet. But, man, there's so much stuff here. You can just, every day of the week, you can find something somewhere.
Right. I mean, with such close proximity to like such huge cities like New York and Philadelphia and stuff like that, I mean, it's just got to be endless lists of garage sales and auctions and all sorts of crazy stuff you can go to.
And when I lived up in New York, they had great flea markets in New York City. Most people think, flea market, dirt market, you're thinking like, Pennsylvania, South Jersey, out in the middle of nowhere. But I learned from being in the city, that everybody would come and bring the things in. So through the 90s, when we were buying stuff at the markets, New York was the place to go because nice. They would bring the stuff in from Connecticut and all these other markets. And the other thing about this area is that you can go to a flea market any day of the week. I mean, a lot of places don't have that, but you can literally, if you travel 50 miles, 100 miles from where I live, you can go to a flea market every day of the week. Now, some of them are good, some of them are bad. Sometimes you see the same stuff retreaded over and over again. But, it's out there. You just got to get out there. Colorado's sort of an odd place because you have the winter. I mean, we have the winter here, but people go straight through. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's winter here can be kind of rough for traveling around, but we get used to it. So you were talking about your office is kind of by the stash and stuff, and so obviously, the TV show has been a monster success. Yeah,
amazing. Actually, last weekend we were number 13 on Sunday night, all of cable. Which is just phenomenal. I mean, if you think about it. And, my role on the show is everybody knows me from being in front of the camera, but I'm actually one of the producers. And I oversee a lot of the transactions. And, I do some of the location I'm like the assistant senior location supervisor.
Nice.
And when we shoot the show from early July to mid-September. We work on average 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. It's a very long, grueling schedule. A lot of people ask me, like, well, can I get on now? And no, we're done shooting for the whole season. The season runs until late March. Knock on wood, we'll probably get picked up again just because the numbers are so huge right now.
Right.
And, we'll start pre-production in April, and then we'll segue into having everything set up mid-June, and then we'll start shooting again in July, and we shoot straight through the summer. And it's a great experience for those who are fans of, obviously, Kevin and the guys. You can come down to the stash. We always need people in the morning just to fill the background. because most comic book stores, you work in a comic book store.
Yeah, you don't get going until 1. Yeah,
unless it's Wednesday.
Right.
Wednesday's the big day. So if you're like interested and you want to be on TV and not have a speaking role, you won't get paid for it because
you're just standing around at a comic book shop.
Or your friends, hey, look, it's me. Or if you got interesting items, we're always looking for stuff to walk through the door. One of the things that I do for the show and for the guys is I sort of oversee what comes through the door. And since we're on a schedule and we need to shoot things, we need to know who's coming in. We sort of pre-set up the transactions, but they're legitimate transactions. You come in and want $1,000 for an item. Walt talks you down.
You say no, yeah.
But he gives you cash and you leave with that cash and we keep the item. Likewise, if you come in, you want to buy an item, sometimes we look for the item specifically for you, but you don't necessarily have to buy it. But, what happens and a lot of people ask me this, well, why wouldn't it just be organic? And we try to make it as organic as possible. I think we do a great job. I mean, it's legitimate, true transactions. But there's so much paperwork, of getting somebody in and
on TV and stuff, yeah.
Making sure that we're not dealing with, and I hate to say it, felons or whatever, because people are people. People take missteps all the time. Or the same person comes in 5 or 6 times, which has happened a couple. People keep on trying to sneak in over and over, season after season. I got like 1 or 2 people on a banned list now, or semi-professional. One guy's actually, I think, a professional reality TV. Like, that's all he does is go on reality TV shows. So he's been on our show at least once or twice, but he's tried to get on at least 4 times. And he's got an IMDb that's even longer than mine.
That's just all reality shows.
Yes, and he takes the same item over and over again, moves it around. But it happens too. So, we sort of, we watch the gate a little bit. And, it's a professional environment where we need to, maintain our schedules. Because when you do a show like Comic Book Men, the time frame for a day, costs us $23,000, $25,000 since you've got so many people on site, maybe even more.
Right.
And, and to stay within the budget, you need to control everything. And the guy who is the showrunner, who was legitimately a genius at this, Brian Nichelle, who's like the top dog, he actually, we watch those things. We have 78 days to shoot, and this season we actually stayed within those 78 days.
Nice.
Last we were pretty much 2 or 3 days over. The season before was a mess because we had another production crew in and sort of caused a lot of trouble. And we actually had to go back and do some reshoots, and we almost didn't get a season 3 because of season 2, but they worked it out, massaged it, and the edits are great. And it's all about editing and finishing and just personalities and getting the guys to do what they need to do, but they're great at what they do.
Right.
And I'm like the luckiest guy in Red Bank because, for years I've been the store to the point Mike Zapsik realized that I was using the store as an alley to park my car and go to Starbucks for coffee. Walt would always reach out to me and that's sort of how the whole thing of me walking in and giving him advice on buying stuff. And I am this guy who's been doing this a long time. I've got my name in probably 5, 6, 10 books. I worked for Overstreet in the early 90s. I worked with Ted Hake's Americana for years. So I've been around, and people know who I am. And I've sort of almost matured into the grandfather or the grand godfather of pop cultures.
Right.
Not quite a grand yet, but
getting close.
No, well, maybe.
I mean, yeah, never mind. I don't want to put that on your kids. Sorry.
You know how it is. You blink and all of a sudden they're cursing at you.
You're right. So, speaking of, working real close with the shop too, have they ever picked something up without talking to you about it first, and you've gone into the shop and seen it and just been like, what the fuck were you guys thinking? Why would you buy that?
Okay. Occasionally, but some of the things that we buy that aren't really cool, we buy because of the banter,
right?
And a lot of the Tarzan,
the masturbating Tarzan, yeah,
or Silverhawks, bringing Silverhawks on. A lot of people ask me why'd you put 2 Silverhawks? Because I think in a pop cultural reference, it's very important. You need to segue from Thundercats to Silverhawks to Tiger Sharks. A lot of people aren't even aware that there was a line called Tiger Sharks, toy-wise or a cartoon show. And the Tiger Shark toys go for like thousands of dollars.
Well, because they're like
Thousands.
impossible to find. So
I have a couple, and I've had a couple off and on for years, but I actually have a couple in my collection right now. Impossible to find. So, you need to hit all these things. And maybe it's not like the most exciting for you, but, when you're dealing with such a broader audience, you reach out. You need to have the guys being able to talk and the banter back and forth. And you need to, have people, make comments, like the girl bringing in the zombie babies, perfect background talk,
Right.
And that's what really makes the show entertaining. The stuff that comes on is almost a member of the cast after a while.
Right.
We look for things. There's our dream items. We try to, find them. Sometimes it's possible to find $1,000 item or 2,000 or 10,000 or, massive collection, but we've done fairly well, And again, that's sort of my ballywhack, working with the producers and the guys. I'm sort of like the foil in between the two worlds.
Nice.
Because I live in the world. That's what we do. We're actually going to probably go over to a Comic-Con right after I get off of you here in Philly. There's a small, white box, long box Comic-Con that I like to go to. So we're going to go there for a while.
Nice.
Hang on just one second.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine, man.
Hey, we're eating out front. I'm doing my chat with the long box guys. So can you come up and see me? All right. Sorry about that. It's my other son.
Oh, it's all good.
Again, we're live from the streets of
Philadelphia.
the city of brotherly love. I've only been mugged here twice. No.
I just assume it's exactly the way it is, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So.
I love that show.
Me too. So speaking of things that are totally impossible to find, what is your holy grail and what is your prized possession right now?
Well, I think to find something, there's a toy line, a multi toys made JLA boxed figures in 1967, and they were actually produced in Canada and released on a very small scale here in the States. That's something that I'm looking for. I have people who want those, and they've offered me $25,000 if I can find them. There's 4 sets. So, that's certainly a holy grail, if there's a grail. The other thing is, item. You still there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm still here. I was just listening very intently. My bad.
But if anybody wants to look those up, they're very hard to find, even online. They made the JLA playset, which came out in '66, which was produced by Ideal, which averagely sells for between $5,000 and $10,000 boxed.
Wow.
But the multi-toys are actually scaled down, 3 figures plus 1 vehicle. Impossible to find. I've held a couple. I've seen the loose figures, three Superman figures, a Superman, Superboy, and Lois Lane sold on eBay about 2 years ago for $2,600 for the 3 figures loose.
Wow.
So that's pretty rare stuff. I've never seen it in the wild. I would love to find those. The other thing that I probably would never sell is I own this I'll go into details on a number of other conversations, but I have this 1967 Gamera figure. It's 3 inches tall, and it actually presides in a domed glass jar in my office. And it just took me years to find it. It's the first, considered to be the earliest Gamera figure. And the way I found it, I chased it online for years. I originally lost it at auction for $400, and then I found another one and bid on it up to about $3 and change. And this one that I have now, I actually followed. The guy kept on relisting it. And I realized at that point that I was the last person who was looking for it and knew what it was.
Right. And
I ended up buying it for less than $40. Now, it taught me a couple of things. One is that the internet is just like any other market in the world. It has its moments, its ups and downs. Not everything's, permanent. And you need to follow things. And just like that same hunting, gathering mentality of getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning, you can have that mentality online. Now, I risked losing it for sure, and it was an auction item, so I would have, bid it up and would have gone back to somebody else and shown interest. But I keep that on the shelf. I've never seen another one. I've probably owned it for 10 years. And when I sell it, I don't know. Eventually, everything's got to go. That piece, and I have a 1930s die-cast truck that my dad played with when he was a kid, and I played with at my grandmother's house when I was a kid. So that's probably actually the heart of my collection. The other piece is like the foundation of all my kaiju items, which if you ever go on Instagram, I'm on Instagram, is Popculturism, POPCULTURIZM. And we post, I like to post like 4 to 5 images a day. A lot of them are from the collection. A lot of them are like flea market things. A lot of them are just, hunting and gathering and going to conventions. I posted a lot of images from New York, and we were just out in Kamikaze two weeks ago in LA.
My friend got his first appearance of Groot signed by Stan Lee there. Like, it was pretty awesome.
I love Stan. Everybody asks me if I met Stan Lee. If I'm going to meet Stan Lee, I'm going to meet Stan Lee. I've probably talked to Stan Lee 25 times in the course of 30 years.
Yeah.
He almost knows my name.
He almost knows your name. He still calls you True Believer, though?
Right.
So everybody had heard about, you having your non-spin-off show from Comic Book Men, and then AMC decided to not do, any reality shows except for Talking Dead and Comic Book Men. I know they had talked on Hollywood Babylon about doing that show maybe with a different channel. Is there anything in the works for your own show, like on a different channel or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't know how much I can actually answer yes or no.
You can totally answer maybe. That's fine.
It's a good thing. I have been approached by another network. I'm extremely loyal to AMC. And Comic Book Men, I am still under contract with AMC, certainly up through January 1st with my holding agreement and the spinoff. I mean, that's sort of their internal realignments were not my, I hate to say it, wasn't my fault, which is kind of like a godsend in a lot of ways. So we obviously have shot one pilot. I am currently working on the treatment of a new direction for that original pilot, which should have been the way it had gone originally, but I sort of had a lot of creativity input taken out of my hands. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't like the treatment from what we did in February. It wasn't really like my vision of how my world goes, and my world is very, pretty crazy, but we do certain things a certain way. Working with my buddy Anthony and having 10, 12 people in this huge warehouse full of collectibles and records and comic books and toys, and these characters who come in, literally characters from North Jersey. I mean, if anybody's ever been in North Jersey, like every other person is a friggin' like Soprano wannabe or a reject from It's Only Sunny in Philadelphia. Those people actually
you see a lot of track suits.
Scary. Scary, yes. But those people actually exist. I mean, it's a real thing in New Jersey. It's a I don't understand it. My family's been in New Jersey since the 1600s. I don't talk like that. But they're here, and God bless them. I mean, they certainly add color and texture to a rather boring world at times. So we've tried to incorporate some of that into the new treatment. But it really depends on two things. One is the future of Comic Book Men, which I think happens to be extremely bright. And again, I have incredible loyalties to the guys and Kevin and AMC. And I would, even despite myself, I would probably not do a show if I had to leave AMC's Comic Book Men, because I just think that as a small cog in a larger machine, I have a function and a purpose, and they pay me rather well, and I get to ride my bike to work, and it's solid work for 3-4 months. But in reality, I could do a show 5-10 years from now and just build upon what I'm doing. And a lot of people I know want to be famous, and a lot of people I know want to do TV shows and reality shows, and everybody's got an idea. But the reality of reality shows is it's a very small, defined market. That if you don't cut your niche out and you don't stay true to what you're doing, you will not last. And I think there's a show that was done in New Jersey that sort of, had those sort of issues of sincerity, and they did not last. And they were on a much better time slot at 9:30 on Wednesday, as opposed to Sundays at midnight. But I won't mention the show, but if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, we know what you're talking about.
And, the funny thing is I've known those guys for years. The secondary character, Steve, on that show, I used to go to his house and buy stuff from him in the early, 80s, mid 80s when I got started. He was like one of my major pickers. So it's a very small defined world. Jersey's a funny place. There's really three sections. North of 287 is North Jersey. South of 195 is South Jersey. And then Central Jersey's in between. And a lot of people aren't aware of that because you come down to south of 195 and you got Philly and you've got some great stores and collectors and buyers. And all the big collections get sucked up by the same four people. You go to Central Jersey and, you've got me and a handful of other people. I'm probably the most well-known. Certainly the Stash, they buy a lot of big comic book collections. And then North Jersey, you get into that whole toy explorer, and they're a whole nother breed. I've been butting heads with those guys for 25 years. Not to say that I'm not friends with them. I actually like them. They're very nice people, but I think they went in the wrong direction with their show. I just saw a lot of disingenuous. You can't walk in and offer somebody $60 and turn around and sell at them for $500.
Yeah.
Doesn't make it good.
Well, especially on TV, because all of a sudden people are like, hey, wait a second.
Right. People who actually felt they were taken advantage of.
Yeah.
And need to look for. And, we have those instances where somebody comes to the door and they have something that's so great and they're convinced it's so great and their own pompousness of them being so great that they need to be shut down. And we do that. And I've done that to a number of people, and Walt certainly does that to people. But
quite well.
In reality, our goal is to never make anybody look bad, and we do business the way we do business, and we're structured to do business a certain way, and it's the same structure that I use when I go to the flea market. I once, true story, I bought a collection of Migos from a woman who had found them, and she was on hard times. You could tell she was on hard times, and she didn't know what she wanted for them. And, I could have paid $40, and I said, look, I'm going to give you $250. And she literally started crying in front of me. And it taught me a major lesson, enjoy, because anybody else would have taken advantage of her. But the reality is that I can afford to buy these, and they're worth more than what I'm paying for them. And there's no reason for me as a human being not to try to help you as another human being. And the collectible industry is notorious, just like antique dealers go in and they take advantage of people. And that should be our goal as humans, as collectors, is not ever needing anything, but just going through life and trying to do our best to stay, it's like being a Jedi. There's a dark side. Staying away from the dark side. It doesn't mean at times, there's a gray zone. A lot of people offer me things and I say, well, how much? And they say $20. And I'm not going to argue with them, And occasionally I make a huge score. Sometimes they deserve it because they think they're the smartest person in the room. The rule of thumb is you can never be the smartest person in the room. The minute you're the smartest person in the room, you've already lost the battle.
Right.
And a lot of people are just convinced that, hey, I'm the smartest guy. I know everything. I want this. Okay, here. And in those instances, I turn around and I can sell a $20 item for $4,000,
right.
Which has happened.
I've had that experience before. I bought a long box. Oh, honking.
Well, the Philadelphia. Oh, there we go. They stole the car. It's moved on.
Nice.
Yeah, you bought a long box. I'm sorry.
I bought a long box from a guy for $50, just because it was a long box full of stuff, and he wasn't really too concerned with what was in it. Found a Hulk 102 and a Hulk 180 in it. Next time he came into the shop, I was like, look, man, I don't want you to think I ripped you off. I gave him some extra cash to compensate for two super key issues. You can't go through life, spending cheap and selling big on people and, kind of.
Yeah, you can't. There's a certain point where karma catches up to you. And when karma catches up with you, then you're dead in the water. And I see it happen. I've seen it happen. I've seen very well-known toy dealers from the 80s and 90s, guys who came up with me, who have their names in books, even to this day, they're out of the business because they took advantage of too many people.
Yeah.
Or you didn't adapt to the change in the times. I have a very basic theory of what's hot and what's not and the reasons why. And a lot of it has to do with, what you were playing with when you were 10 years old, 12 years old, and, your age now and how much money you have to spend. And that all sort of correlates together. So if you're not moving and adapting, the hot thing now is Power Rangers go for crazy money.
Yeah.
20 years ago, they were new. There's that 20-year cycle, that 20-year window. 20 years to an 8-year-old, you're 28 years old. Guy's stockbroker in Manhattan, he can afford to buy a G1 friggin' Optimus Prime for $1,500, never removed from the box. Now, I don't think Transformers are anything more than icons at that point, because the Transformer needs to be transformed.
Right.
And my own collection, I have probably 500-600 Transformers, and I think only one of them or two of them or maybe four of them are boxed.
Well, because the rest you want to turn into a freaking robot from a truck. That's the point.
I have my new office. I actually have a Fort Max, and it pretty much lords over everything else, and it's great. I mean, I love that toy. It's
awesome.
One of my favorite toys ever, and I've owned probably 4 or 5 of them, but I always needed to move them along because I could never afford to own it, and I've actually gotten to the point where I can afford to keep things. So, that's the older you get, the more stuff you have, the more stuff you can keep, the less you want to sell. So I obviously sell things to keep food on the table and everything moving. But since I have this consulting business that sort of pays for a lot of things, and working as the show expert on comic book certainly has paid dividends. So hang on just one second. Where are you going to go?
You go back to Mom's Books and Records.
Are they there now?
Meet me up there, and then
Okay, fine. We may stop by before you head off. All right, sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're fine. So I just have maybe 1 or 2 more questions. This kind of segues from the last thing. What's that one thing that you just kind of regret letting go of? That came in and you're just like, oh man, I want to keep this, but I can't.
Well, probably that first toy I ever got, that Troy Ruttman Racer.
Yeah.
Because I did sell it, and the flip side is it was the money that I probably built my quote unquote empire upon. But I always would like to get that back. So if I ever become immensely wealthy and successful, that is what I'm going to hunt down and find.
Nice. And then, I guess, to wrap it up, because we've taken up a ton of your time already this morning, is there any, what kind of projects and stuff are you working on that you just want everybody to know about? And just your time to plug,
I just did a bit part in a new movie called Hudson County, being directed by Joe Troiani. It's going to be released in the early spring, I guess, is what they're shooting for. So hopefully, if you get a chance, it'll get picked up and somebody will get to see it. Hudson County is a new movie I'm working on. Certainly look for Burn in Hell in the DVD aisles of Best Buy sometime early next year. That's the Blood Flood production film that we're currently working on. I will be at the podcast, what do they call it, festival in New York City in January on That Man, on Fat Man, and possibly on I Sell Comic Books if Mike's in a happy mood. And then I know I've got things coming up, but off the top of my head, I can't remember. We've been traveling for so long. This is actually the first weekend in 6-7 weeks that I've kind of gotten to chill out.
Right.
So I'd have to check my schedule. I'm sure we're going to be at some convention sooner or later.
Right
but,
on.
Look for us Sunday nights at midnight, Eastern Standard Time, whatever it is. And you're Mountain Central, right?
Yep.
Or Mountain?
Yep.
So I assume it comes on 10 o'clock? Or does it come on at midnight?
I think it comes on at 10.
Yeah. So you guys actually get to watch it at a decent time, which is kind of funny. Because we're always taking a lot of crap about it being on at midnight. But in reality, if you want to put a Kevin Smith TV show, what time would you air it? You'd have to air it at midnight.
Yeah.
It just makes so much more sense. The fact that it comes on after The Great Walking Dead, and Talking Dead. We were in the audience of The Talking Dead, second time I've been in the audience. And he is Chris is one of the nicest people you will ever meet. And by far one of the hardest working people, Chris Hardwick. So watch The Talking Dead. Walking Dead scares the shit out of me.
Love it.
I'm always reminded that it's just a TV show. But they show it 3 times because I think just for me, because the first one I'm usually closing my eyes. The second one I'm a little less. Then the third one I know exactly what's happening and when, so I can leave
you're
the
ready
room.
for it. That's awesome.
But it's been a great experience, and my thanks always go out to AMC and the folks at Original Media for all their support on my efforts, and the guys at Secret Stash, which is open today. Stop down and, it's this Sunday, probably won't air now, but if you're in town on Sunday, stop down and say hey to Sunday Jeff and Marco, my good friend Marco, who works at the Stash.
Nice.
Who got his job because of me, whether good or bad. Well, that's it. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Thanks so much for doing it, man. This is really awesome for us too.
Yeah, this is the oddest environment I've ever done something like this, sitting on the streets of Philadelphia.
Well, hey, I'm glad it was picturesque and nice, and you're not just stuck behind a microphone or anything. You're enjoying your day still. So
I'll post it. And if you go on Pop Culturism on Instagram or follow us on Twitter, Pop Culturism, I will post an image of exactly where we're sitting, so you can actually scroll back and take a look at it.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
And send me a link, and I'll make sure it gets out there.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, brother. Take care.
Yeah.